is no way they can be this stupid. How is it that none of these gaming publishers ever learn from their mistakes, and how does their leadership keep their jobs? We keep having these candlelit vigils for all of the developers that have lost their jobs during layoffs, but we need to be pointing our fingers at these brainless CEOs that keep sticking a fork into a light socket and wondering why it shocks them. WB Games following a massive shakeup at that company, studio closures, layoffs, and more, all stemming from the high-profile failure that was Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, is now saying, you know what, let's throw our hat into the ring another time, and they're making another live service game, and it's DC-related. We have publishers with a treasure trove of incredible IP, yet for whatever reason, they just keep making the same games over and over and over, and then pretending like nothing ever happened. There are audiences, likely people that are watching this video right now, that would much rather see something new or something fresh or, God forbid, something that we haven't seen in over a decade. But no, you get another live service game. Brother, may I have some oats? Today, we are talking why WB thinks that Suicide Squad is worth another try. There's a joke I could make there, and I'm definitely not going to be doing that. How they're maneuvering their way through $38 billion in debt, and why whatever they do isn't really going to make much of a difference. You know, I am of the mind that at the highest levels in this industry, these guys are just into getting fin-domed. They just zip up the Gimp mask and throw money into the shredder. Lately, I've been having a hard time picking out which gaming publisher is becoming more of a laughingstock these days. However, seeing the direction of WB Games over the past couple of years, I think that they're making a really strong case for themselves. Whether it's putting out games that nobody wanted, high-profile failures, ignoring valuable IP that gamers actually want, or turning Mortal Kombat into Mortal Minivan Karen Apocalypse, they have done a lot of damage to their reputation. Seriously, who thought those designs were a good idea? Oh, never mind. I guess it was actually the entire company that thinks it's a good idea. Actually, I made a video earlier this year where I was covering the bigger picture, how WB as a whole has been bleeding value and racking up debt. They lost nearly 40% of their net worth in the last 5 years. They're buried under nearly $40 billion in liabilities thanks to a tangled mess of mergers and acquisitions. And recently, they pulled the old Ubisoft maneuver by splitting the company in half and shuffling their debt around like it's a magic trick. Now, the TV side, Discovery, CNN, and the streaming side is going to get the bulk of it, while the movie and game division is going to walk away a little bit lighter. But let's not kid ourselves. This is not a fix. This is just them kicking the can down the road, and the way that WB Games has been handling itself lately, well, you know, setting a lot of money on fire, I doubt that can is going very far. Now, to be fair, last year things were looking promising. Mortal Kombat 1 did sell well enough, and Hogwarts Legacy was a monster hit, one of the only games of the past decade to outsell Call of Duty. Over 30 million copies sold in 2024. It had people hopeful for the studios, for the IP, for WB's future, but that hope didn't last. Because instead of building on that momentum, they did what every modern publisher does best. They got greedy. WB followed up Hogwarts Legacy with Harry Potter Quidditch Champions, a standalone multiplayer game that never found an audience. It peaked at around 6,500 concurrent players on Steam and quietly disappeared from the conversation. And looking at it now, it's obvious that they didn't put Quidditch into Hogwarts Legacy specifically because they were planning to sell it to us later. And then came the crown jewel of their bad decision, Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, a $200 billion disaster posing as a live service game. From the moment that game dropped, it was a certified meme. Bland character designs, every hero wielding a gun because, surprise, it's a looter shooter. The UI was a cluttered mess, neon vomit all over the screen, and nearly every progression system was monetized to hell. It peaked at just over 13,000 players on Steam before it collapsed. WB cut support, laid off staff, and now, less than a year later, that game's essentially abandonware. And speaking of abandonware, right around the exact same time that Suicide Squad was imploding, WB also announced that they were shutting down Multiversus, which still blows my mind because this is a live service fighting game that actually had an audience. It went through early access, multiple betas, and then they just kind of let it rot. The dev team missed content deadlines, failed to deliver new characters, and the player base just lost interest. This isn't rocket science. Drop a new fighter every couple of months, throw in some fresh cosmetics, and rotate the maps. It's not like they needed to reinvent the genre. They just needed to keep the machine running, but they couldn't. And that's what makes this also funny to me, because for all of the desperation to build a live service hit, they actually had one, but they couldn't support it because they didn't have the talent, the structure, or the experience to maintain a live service game. They wanted that live service money, but they weren't equipped to earn it. But that doesn't mean that they aren't going to keep trying, because what's the old adage? When you fall, just dust yourself off and throw another $300 million onto the fire. In an article written by Lincoln Carpenter of PC Gamer titled, "After losing $200 million on Suicide Squad, WB has another live service game in the works based off of iconic IPs from the vast Warner Brothers and DC Comics catalog. It's happening again." They write, "If the last decade has taught us anything, it's that live service game development is this industry's equivalent to high-stakes gambling, where publishers ante up millions of dollars in hopes that their game will hit the jackpot of becoming a lifestyle like Fortnite or Roblox. But as we've seen from countless failed launches, almost nobody hits the jackpot, when even Destiny 2 is having a hard time maintaining its place as a forever game fixture. The bet seems like a bad one." Warner Brothers, however, apparently hasn't met a gambler's fantasy it didn't like, despite losing a combined $300 million with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League and Multiversus. A new job posting indicates that WB Games is once again chasing the live service dream. The listing is for an executive producer position at Gotham Knights developer and Suicide Squad support studio WB Games Montreal. In the job description, Warner Brothers says the executive producer will lead the development of a high-quality AAA game based on one of the iconic IPs from the vast Warner Brothers and DC Comics catalog. The listing doesn't tell us what IP the unannounced game will be based on. Given WB Montreal's over, I wouldn't blame you for speculating that it might be something in the larger Batmanosphere, but based on the following job responsibilities specified in the listing, we get a clear picture of what kind of game Warner Brothers has in mind. Oversee all phases of development from the concept to post-launch live operations. Oversee post-launch content and live service strategy, ensuring ongoing player engagement. Additionally, the posting lists deep understanding of full game development lifecycle, including live services, under its preferred qualifications. I just don't get it. You guys have had 3 live service games crash and burn in the last 3 years. You've likely torched $500 million at this point, and somehow your best response is just to keep feeding the machine. What are you guys doing? I actually agree with the PC Gamer article here. They're saying that this is high-stakes gambling. That's exactly what it is. WB isn't investing, they're betting. And even with Hogwarts Legacy pulling in insane numbers, none of that is going to make a dent because they just keep reinvesting that same money back into the casino. 30 million copies sold, and the company is still barely treading water. And instead of stepping back and recalibrating, maybe thinking about the games that you're making or the quality of those games, they just keep borrowing, pushing harder, and winding up broke again. Look, I get the temptation. Everybody is seeing the kind of money that these live service, gacha, and mobile games are pulling in. It's real, it's massive, and it's very alluring, especially to your shareholders. But the part that these executives don't seem to realize or internalize is that the games that are succeeding right now, or the ones that are doing well, usually have 2 things working for them. Either they are strong mechanically, or they have some type of long-term cultural presence that just keeps people coming back. You can dunk on Genshin and Fortnite all day, but the reality is they're well-made games, they're consistently supported, they have built systems that people engage with and talk about. WB doesn't have any of that. And beyond that, these games carry weight. Genshin, Fortnite, Roblox, they have mind share, and that's not something that you're just able to create out of thin air. They've become cultural landmarks, especially for younger audiences. And I mean, everybody saw all the memes that were posted because of Darth Vader inside of Fortnite. I don't know what it is about that game, but these guys just continue to catch lightning in a bottle over and over again. It's like they print memes over there, but I just don't see a DC branded live service game having that kind of pull. It doesn't mean that DC is bad or irrelevant, but in the context of live service, I just don't see it having the draw that they think it has. It works for single player, it works for narrative, but trying to force that IP into a lifestyle game, I just don't see it happening. And I'm not saying that Marvel is better. That's not the kind of argument I'm trying to have right now. But it is a data reality that Marvel has broader cultural recognition right now. Whether it's the accessibility of the characters, the consistent output from Disney, or just the sheer volume of content that these guys put out, they're just more present. And right now, presence within live service really matters. That's the reason why something like Marvel Rivals does really well. These games live and die by mindshare, and trying to turn DC characters into live service anchors, it just doesn't expand the audience. I think it shrinks it. Anytime you make a game with an established IP that's outside of gaming, it's like a funnel. You're sifting players through a filter. Do they play games? Do they like the genre? Do they like live service? Do they care about our IP? Do they like our take on that IP? At every single step, you're going to lose people. And when your characters aren't household names, that drop-off becomes lethal, because that was the part that really hurt Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. Sure, the game was absolutely garbage, but beyond that, most of the people had no clue who the playable characters were. Playable characters, obviously not the heroes themselves. People know who the Flash and Batman and Superman and all those guys are, but outside of Harley Quinn, you really don't know the rest of those guys, or at least not a lot of other people do, and that's a problem when you need 300,000 active concurrent players across all platforms to be able to break even. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not just hard, it's delusional to act like this is a safe bet, especially when the other option that you have, one that is already proven to work for you with Batman Arkham series and the Hogwarts Legacy game, is just to make a high-quality single-player title. Something in short supply that people obviously want right now, but I mean, hey, who wants to sell 20 to 30 million copies when you can make $1 billion annually off of microtransactions? If you guys want a mind's eye view into what these executives are thinking, I'll give you a demo real quick. Seeing that WB Montreal is the one that's making it, and also seeing that Marvel Rivals just popped off recently, I'd bet a fair share of money that it probably went something like this. An executive saw that, went into a boardroom office and said, I have an idea. We'll make a hero shooter, because if it worked for Marvel, it will work for us. And then the crowd went wild. The dumbest answer almost always ends up being the right one when it comes to these guys. They are so detached. This is just how simple-minded they are. Nepotism will do that to you. I swear, I just heard all for one when I said that. I swear that if in a year from now we see a teaser trailer for a hero shooter based in the DC universe that looks like Marvel Rivals, I'm going to start making videos calling for the jobs of these CEOs. Probably should already be doing that to begin with, but this is just getting out of hand at this point. We already see where the money and the players are falling right now. We have a decade of successes that you can look at, and these guys are just ignoring it. Everybody is leaning towards well-made, fairly priced, single-player games. That's what people are looking for right now. And those games always can print money as long as you actually deliver on what people are looking for. Games that are letting developers cook rather than these paint-by-the-numbers, trend-chasing, investor breadwinner games that you guys keep trying to make. You are ignoring your customers. You are ignoring the audience. You do not deserve your job. You published one of the highest selling, one of the fastest selling games in the last decade. You looked at that success and said, nah, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to go and make a live service game. Your customers rewarded you for making a good decision, for making a well-made and fun game that they enjoyed. And you took that money, you wiped your ass with it, and you invested it back into live service, into a market that is oversaturated and that nobody wants right now. What are you doing, man? What are you doing with yourself? What's even more frustrating, and this is something that I think is a bigger issue, just kind of industry-wide, but they have so many other games that they could be making. One of the things that really struck me was that they came out and said that they are focused on making Game of Thrones, DC games, Harry Potter, and Mortal Kombat. I think that was the only ones that they said. Outside of that, they're not going to be making anything else. So just those 4 IPs that they're focused on. And while those IPs do have some strength behind them, I definitely think you can make some pretty good games. You have so many other games that you could be making, but you just don't. One of the weirdest trends that's taken over the last decade is just how tunnel vision these publishers have become. Year after year, they are narrowing their focus down of their entire catalog to like 3 or 4 franchises, and they're just running it into the ground while everything else is just rotting in a vault somewhere. And I know that people are going to be like, oh, you're just nostalgic, and that's all it is. But no, this genuinely makes sense because these companies are leaving valuable IP on the table when they could be expanding their portfolios, refreshing their offerings, and avoiding the burnout that comes with serving the same reheated slop year over year over year. Capcom is a perfect example of this. They're sitting on Dino Crisis and Power Stone, Right now, horror games are thriving again, and Monster Hunter has become a global phenomenon. So tell me, how is it that the game that blends those two concepts together is still MIA for more than 20 years? Same thing goes for Power Stone. I was at my local game store the other night playing Magic the Gathering, and the owner had Power Stone matches running in the background. God, I love that game. With the popularity of Smash Brothers, Rivals of Aether 2, and even WB's now abandoned Multiversus, Capcom could easily pivot their Street Fighter pedigree that they've built over the years into a platform fighter with a massive cast that they could pull from all across all their different legacy franchises, and yet they've done nothing. And it's not just Capcom. Chrono Trigger and Parasite Eve are still collecting dust at Square Enix. Sony hasn't touched Legend of Dragoon in decades. Blizzard has ignored StarCraft. Ubisoft has sidelined Rayman. And it's just like everybody has picked a lane and they just hit the gas and they just will not pull out of it. These companies, they all used to experiment constantly. Platformers, ARPGs, turn-based RPGs, FPS titles, weird one-off games that they would make. And now they just say, well, we make 3 games and that's it. And I think that's killing the industry. I think it's killing it creatively. It's shrinking the skill set of every single dev team. It's making audiences more critical of every single sequel, and it's bleeding out the kind of cultural variety that used to make gaming exciting in the first place. I think that's why indie has done so well over the last few years. Then you have WB, who just comes out and says it straight face that their future is focused on Harry Potter, DC, Mortal Kombat, and Game of Thrones. That's it. Meanwhile, Monolith is getting saddled with superhero projects that quietly get scrapped when they could be reviving something like Condemned, or God forbid they could make a Fear game. I mean, still to this day, there's nothing quite like that game. Tactical, psychological, atmospheric. There is so much room for a game like that, but they have just left it buried. And it's not just the horror stuff. They own the entire Midway arcade library. With how hot ARPGs have been lately, why not revive something like Gauntlet? They've got the rights to the Matrix, but they haven't touched that since Matrix Online 20 years ago. They have the entire Hanna-Barbera, Looney Tunes, Scooby-Doo, Jetsons, Flintstones, all of that other stuff, and they just don't use any of that stuff outside of the Multiversus game that they made and then abandoned a year later. The problem is, I look at everything the WB owns, all the IP that they're sitting on, and I look at where they're actually headed, and I know exactly what to expect. They said that they're wanting to focus on Game of Thrones, and what's the first thing that they do? They partner with Netmarble and make some weird, clunky, pay-to-win mobile game. That was the grand plan. That's the vision. Not a high-quality RPG, not a story-driven epic, but a mobile grinder designed to milk whales and peddle nostalgia. Why wouldn't you just give that Game of Thrones project to Monolith and let them build a Shadow of Mordor style game with the Nemesis system? It's literally perfect for that universe. Betrayals, political backstabbing, shifting rivalries, that kind of dynamic AI structure fits Game of Thrones like a glove, and it would actually play to the strengths of that studio that spent years developing and refining those systems, but instead, Monolith gets saddled with a superhero project, and one of the most adaptable gameplay systems in the industry just gets wasted. You know what? While we're on the subject of Monolith and Shadow of Mordor, why not just form a strategic partnership with Embracer to license the Lord of the Rings IP again? Embracer obviously has no idea what they're doing with it. The only thing that they've put out is Tales of the Shire, a cozy farming simulator. Meanwhile, WB has an internal studio with actual experience working in that world. They could offload some of the financial risk, they could split the cost, and they could make a Lord of the Rings game that people actually want. It is one of the most recognizable and underutilized properties in all of gaming, and both companies would benefit from doing literally anything worthwhile with it. And the thing that really pisses me off with all this lack of using other IP is what it's doing to the people that are actually making games, because you got teams like Monolith who built one of the most innovative systems of the past decade, and instead of letting those guys evolve it, WB just shoves them onto DC games for support or sidelines them altogether. Studios don't get to build what they're good at anymore. They just get told what trend to chase and when, and that's just the job now. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if the team wants to make it or even if the audience is asking for it. It's just marching orders from executives who have never even designed a game before in their life. And when the whole thing eventually collapses, like it definitely will, it's not the executives who get cut, it's the developers, the designers, the writers, the QA testers, the artists, the people who spent years grinding on these systems that were doomed from the start. Live service games just aren't bad bets, they're meat grinders. They've been destroying this industry, and the longer this cycle continues, the more it's going to burn out the people who actually make games worth playing anymore. It's no wonder why so many veterans have been leaving to go work at smaller studios or go start their own, because the system doesn't reward creativity anymore, it punishes it. And the reason this keeps happening is simple, short-term thinking. That's all it is. These publishers do not greenlight projects because they believe in them. They greenlight projects because somebody else's version already worked of it. Marvel Rivals is trending. Let's make that. Fortnite is printing cash still. Okay, we'll copy it. Baldur's Gate 3 did numbers. Hold on a minute. Too bad. We're already locked into a superhero gotcha MMO with a 12-year roadmap and a $200 million investment, so we can't really make a game like that. There's no vision, no patience, no long game. These guys are just chasing somebody else's success without even knowing how it worked in the first place. You just can't build a legacy that way. You can't even build a company that way. Every single new IP getting viewed as a gamble. Every established one is milked until the audience hates it. And the moment that a project stumbles, even slightly, these guys are going right back to the safest idea possible, which usually means something live, something branded, and something completely devoid of risk. That's how you go from publishing Batman Arkham Asylum to Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. And the worst part is these guys actually think it's a plan. At some point, we just have to call it what it is. Mismanagement at the highest level. WB isn't just making bad decisions. They are making the same bad decisions over and over while pretending each one is a new and bold strategy. They are sitting on some of the most recognizable IP in the world, and instead of letting their talented studios take creative risks and play to their strengths, no, they are forcing them through the same broken funnel of live service monetization and trend chasing. And for what? Games nobody plays, layoffs nobody ever learns from, a company that just keeps lighting more and more money on fire and calling it innovation. The players know it, the developers know it, and the only ones that are still pretending like this makes any sense are the ones that still keep getting promoted for it. I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's just sad at this point. It's just a vicious cycle that continues and nobody wants to break the wheel. We just keep seeing them make the exact same mistakes over and over again. They keep losing money. We keep losing out on bad games. These developers keep losing their jobs, and all the meanwhile, these executives get away on a golden parachute. You know, in a lot of cases, I wish for failure on some of these companies because I do not like the way that they operate. I do not like how they are not serving their audiences or how they don't treat their developers well. But the one thing that sucks about all of this is that for every single bad game or canceled game that we see come out of these studios, it's another 5 years or more or never that we're going to see a good game come from publishers or studios that we want to see good stuff from. You know, I would kill for a good Lord of the Rings game. Man, that would go so hard. I have no idea why that IP is like the least used IP in all of gaming, even though like the vast majority of the gaming audience loves Lord of the Rings. I know that it's owned by Embracer, so we're likely never to see a good game out of those guys. We've already seen that already with the Tales of the Shire or whatever it was called. But imagine a Baldur's Gate 3 CRPG Return to the King. God, that would go so hard. Why am I doing this to myself? I mean, I would settle for a Shadow of Mordor or something simple, but no, probably not. You know, part of me wants these companies to fail, but at the same time, it's just such a damn waste. It really is. And I don't see WB Games turning things around anytime soon. That company needs a massive shakeup. They need new leadership. They need a new vision, one that does not include live service, because I think that that's just a cancer for those guys. Otherwise, they're just going to continue to gamble away all of their money and all of their IP to the point where they don't have anything left, and they start selling that IP off, and they start selling some of these studios off, and then it's the hope that those studios and IP go somewhere where it actually gets put to work. But as we've seen how that's worked over the past couple of years, that doesn't happen. You know, I was looking at it earlier, and out of the past 5 years, out of the top 20 games, 2 of them have been live service. There's been 25 AAA live service games in the past 5 years that have been released, or more, 25 plus, I think is what the number was. I don't have the exact numbers on me. And 5 of them actually found success. I was going to say 6, but the 6th one was Diablo 4, which as a game, sure, sales-wise, it found success, but as a live service, I think that game is completely cooked. There's just no way that they're making money on that game. 25% odds on a $300 million bet with the future of my studio at stake and all of my employees. That's not a bet I would take. Not me. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Peace.
Family, 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 family.